the experts that will develop their thoughts and explain what they have to say. Aurelia Mañé from the University of Barcelona, Gerrit Citas, as I said, from the Cyprus Centre at PRIO, Lauren Haiti, MENA Director of Natural Resources Government Institute, Karim El-Gently, Associate Fellow at Chatham House, Christian Berkin-Witten, Director of the Peace Research Institute Middle East Center. And so that's it from my side. Welcome. I am not, they've given me a very long CD of all people who are going to intervene. You will appreciate by yourselves directly much better than with my words the quality of what they are doing. And so I pass the floor with great pleasure to Mr. Gerrit Citas. And thank you for being with us here in Barcelona today.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, for your kind words. It's wonderful to be with you. It's wonderful to be again in Barcelona, and lovely to be cooperating once again with IEMed. We're also part together of Euromesco, and we try, I think, commonly to join forces in doing what we do best, in the sense of combining this the independent research capability with informing public dialogue and public policy making. And we like to do that in a region where, how can I be kind to it? We rarely fight facts. We fight ghosts and perceptions, and those perceptions at the end of the day become the reality upon which people make up their mind. So I think I'm speaking for IEMed as well when we say that, you know, we all the cooperating institutions try to introduce a measure of detachment and objectivity in the public dialogue and contribute to that. The eastern you go to the Mediterranean, these get exacerbated and accentuated and augmented, all of these feelings. There you add the political leaderships that are not always to be taken for granted in their seriousness. You get people who are, to quote Umutaz Kerimli, tormented by history. You have people who look to the past and literally we live our lives dealing with the past rather than the future. But although the problems are in the past, I think the solutions lie in the future. So this is pretty much what we try to do. You know, sometimes I'm afraid that, you know, it's like driving a car and looking only at the rear view mirror. There you're going to have an accident. I think we need to be looking ahead and from time to time to the rear view mirror, which is something that we magnificently fail at doing. But with all of this, we try, as I say, to introduce a measure of objectivity and information to the public dialogue. And it was with these feelings that we gladly joined the summer school this year, and hopefully the summer school in the years to come, in contributing to this linkage between informing public debates and research and policy making, as some of these institutions do. I'd like then, on behalf of the PRIO Cyprus Centre, to welcome you very warmly here, and I very much look forward to our deliberations tonight, but also to 2023, 2024, 2025, and so on. Thank you.
So thank you very much. Thank you very much. It is a pleasure really for us to have this kind of collaboration with you. We will keep working together in the framework of Euromesco for many years, I hope. Because, as I was saying, Euromesco, who is dealing with security affairs, but not only security in the large sense of it, human security, energy security, everything needs security today. In previous epochs, periods, security meant just not to be beaten. Now you can suffer from many different aspects. You can die of hunger without being bitten, if there is a scarcity of grain, for example, as we will suffer directly, especially in North African countries in the Mediterranean. We can suffer when the winter comes because of scarcity of energy. And on top of it, the state of war that will continue, spreading its effects in many other different aspects of our normal life, which unfortunately, for some long period now, may not become to be normal again. And we have to be prepared for that. We have to tell our fellow citizens that they have to realize that we have a war going on in Europe, and we will have to afford for it in terms of enduring difficult situations when the winter comes, or when the scarcity of this or that energy or food, etc., comes, in terms of how do we deal with the flows of poor population that will have to strive to find a way to survive, etc., etc. No? Okay, but now today we will concentrate on this human and energy security in the Mediterranean when East meets West, which is not always a good thing, because we used to be much more calm in the Western Mediterranean than we were in the East, but now everything gets more complicated. We have all conflicts in Western Mediterranean that are getting stronger again. So let's hope that we will be able to deal with it, and for that we need really human and energy security. And so I will leave the panel in the hands of Emmanuel Cohen-Adria, who, as you know, is the director of the Euro-Mediterranean Policies Department here at IEMed, that will deal with the rest of the session on behalf of our institute. So, Emmanuel,
thank you,
Senen, and the session is yours.
Thank you. Good evening to everyone here and also people behind your screens. It's a pleasure to be in such good company tonight, really. I'd like to join my words to my thanks to yours, and then to Harry for co-organizing this event with us, to the co-organizers of the summer school. I see Umut in the back, and again to all the participants here and behind the screens. By the way, let me already encourage everyone that connected from home to put comments or questions as they come, not necessarily waiting for the end of the session to do it, and then we'll take this to the debates, to which we will get very, very soon. After the presentations, I will not introduce the speakers because that was done already, but you see that there is both expertise from, let's say, West Med and East Med here in the panel. We'll be navigating between both. We'll be navigating between energy, human security, and hard security as well. That will be a great discussion, I'm sure. So let me directly move to the first panelist, Aurelia. Let's start with you with these security lenses that we'll be having for this panel. Could you maybe help us make sense of what's going on in the West Med in terms of gas flows and markets? How are these gas dynamics impacted by security dynamics, and the other way around? How may them shape security trends or be used in conflict dynamics in the region, in particular in West Med? Aurelia, the floor is yours. I'll be leaving maybe 8 minutes to each speaker, and then we'll be.
I have.
He will be coming, and then we'll have plenty of time for the debate. So Aurelia, the floor is yours, and you will have the slides behind you in a second.
Thank you, Emmanuel, in any case, and thank you to all, and of course to IEMed and PRIO for inviting myself and having me here. I feel a bit, I don't know, because I know more about the West than the East, very few, but I will try to make, I don't know exactly what you asked for, but some kind of landscape of gas at the Mediterranean, and see what we can discuss about it. So, just while I have the presentation, in some ways the title was whether East will meet West on gas, and it will create some kind of common Mediterranean geoenergy space. And actually I don't have the answer to it. I will just put 3 issues with 3 slides, and just to put and to foster the discussion afterwards. Okay. So the first thing is what has been happening for the last 20 years in the international gas trade. And, well, just, you know, these images, I think, are quite, they are explaining a lot. I would say the first thing on your, yeah, thank you. Perfect. On your, well, it doesn't. No? Sorry. Okay. Well, on your right, on the right, you have this graph, and what it has been happening since the 20s is something that has been the increase of the LNG trade, and in some way it has, you know, it has increased to the point that it outperforms the natural gas. Okay, so this is one of the main changes. The second one is happening just those last months, is that the one that is overtaking also the Russian gas is the LNG from the United States. So that means something which is apparently it's not very relevant, but I think it's very relevant, that we had been increasing gas, but we had been changing the shape of the trade of gas, and mainly this gas is LNG. So I will try to explain here what does it mean. And if I can move, I'm not, sorry, I cannot do it. Okay, so what is the meaning of such data? The meaning of such data is something that I named the petrolization of gas, which it's very easy to understand. That means that if the international trade of national gas is shifting to the LNG could be traded more similarly than oil. So in some way, we are making the gas market equivalent to the oil market. Okay, so this is quite important because that means we are changing the kind of contract that we are having. Mainly, they were bilateral. They could be in the LNG regional or international. They were stable. They would be volatile. They were long-term. They will be short-term. And the price will be depending on the contract, and probably the price will be international. So this is very relevant. I don't know if we will talk about that. It's not my main point right now, but we could discuss this afterwards. What I would like to discuss today is this last, the geoenergy space. That means if we think in terms of Mediterranean, that the natural gas trade which was happening within the Mediterranean borders up to now was what I say territorially continuous. There were pipelines from Algeria to Spain, from Algeria to Italy, from Algeria to Spain, or from Algeria to Italy, or stop. But more or less they were continuous, and there were some trade which was made by ship, from LNG, but not much. And anyhow, this trade was also within the borders. Okay, but if we are changing that, and all this gas, for instance, from the United States, but also from Qatar, from Australia, which is not coming to Europe, but it could at some point, that means that we can have this international trade of gas, which will be territorially non-continuous. So this is relevant if we are thinking in some kind of Mediterranean region, because that means that maybe there will be actors which are from abroad the region, namely, for instance, the United States, or the gas of the United States, let's speak rightly. I mean, it's not the United States, but it's the gas from the sellers of gas of the United States, who will be actors in the Mediterranean space. And maybe, I'm not saying this would happen, but Algerian gas who could be sold outside the region. Or for instance, Spain, which is in the Western Mediterranean, right now we are buying more gas from the United States than from Algeria. So we are a Mediterranean country which would not be belonging to the Mediterranean space when we are talking of gas. Okay, that's the idea. So I thought with this idea of territorially continuous and non-continuous to prepare such, small talk, because if we have to think in this idea that whether east will meet west on Mediterranean, we have to think that we were thinking in this idea that this is a whole space that we are connected within, but maybe we will not if we talk just on gas. So, Emmanuel, you can change the slide, I don't know how. So, now we are going to the third question, and the third question is what is happening in the Mediterranean in gas? Well, there are happening many things, but I will briefly just 3 ideas. First idea, from the western side, it's Algeria. Algeria was traditional gas trade, natural gas, mostly. They have also LNG, and this gas was linked to Spain and Italy, but I think, as all of us know at this very moment, this trade of gas is shifting to Italy. So it's moving towards, I would not say east, well, it's east, but it's not the east, it's more Middle Europa, it's more the center of Europe. But so we are moving towards this. Secondly, what is happening is Libya. We don't know what it will happen with Libya, but probably I think it will be the great game changer at some point, depending on what would happen with the gas. And we will see if it will be gas, natural gas, or liquid natural gas. And then if we move further to east, I will not talk very much of this because I say I'm not such an expert, but nowadays one thing which is already there and one of the winners of the present situation, I would not say in the future, is Egypt. Egypt that already had signed this MOU with the European Union and has these plans of liquefied gas, and probably it's one of the big games. So if we look at the map, I'm sorry it does not work, or I don't know how it works, but what we are seeing is like everything is going towards the center, towards Italy and Greece. So this idea where east meets west, I don't know if they will meet it, but it will be Middle Europa. It's like moving towards this industrial part, the blue banana of the European Union, and they are moving towards us. So that is what I can think. I'm not saying I'm sure, but I can think about this idea of where the two regions will meet in Mediterranean. That also means a peripherization of the western part, namely Spain, from the Mediterranean, and we will see other things. But of course, I'm finishing. Of course, there are two things that we don't know, because this is happening, and that's what I put the first slide, in a framework of the changing of the world international trade of gas, so this idea of petrolization, so maybe this would not happen, and all this gas from Algeria, Libya, and Egypt will be poured into a great pool of gas, as it is for the case of oil. So this is one of the things that may happen. So then there will be not a Mediterranean gas, it will be international gas, which is poured into the great pool. And the other thing that we don't have time now to talk about is if this strategy will be linked to the hydrogen, because then this could change many things. And I stop here just for the debate. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you for laying these strong foundations for our debate. I'll turn to Harry now. Harry, could you also, now moving maybe to the east now precisely, could you also make this effort of trying to connect what's going on in the east and what's going on in the west, and elaborate again on the security energy nexus? Harry, the floor is yours.
Thank you. When Andrei Gromyko, as Soviet foreign minister, was asked to describe relations with the West in one word, he said good. And then in 2 words, not good. This is pretty much the situation, unfortunately, because exactly as Emmanuel was saying, we have this nexus, the unfortunate nexus between energy, security, hard security, migration, human security, and so on and so forth. And I'd like to make just a few general remarks on the East Med as the framework within which such developments take place, and connected to more concrete developments on the energy front. Unfortunately, oil and gas are not found in Switzerland. They're found in places which are sometimes very godforsaken, and we have to deal with the situation on the ground. What I think we don't do is going 30,000 feet up and take a helicopter view of the whole region, because obviously what's happening in the East Med affects the West Med and vice versa. And in some of the more candid discussions we had with foreign ministries in some countries, it was admitted that, you know, we don't do that. We do very good analysis in depth at one or the other, but rarely connect the dots. So first suggestion, go 30,000 feet up, look at the region as a whole, and this is really a suggestion that we also sometimes bring us together in our flying circus to the EU to try and deal with the situation in the region as a whole. Because exactly what's happening in the East Med affects the West Med and vice versa. So connecting geographical dots is one thing. Connecting thematic dots is another thing, because obviously, as I said, what's happening in energy affects human security, affects migration, affects economics, affects hardcore security, and so on and so forth. Now, by way of suggestions, I would also say that we need realism, or pragmatism, if you like, which I rarely see sometimes in the way we deal with things. We have to have a sense of urgency, which is also sometimes missing. We truly need to think outside the box, because the box has really not led us very far, and we can't take things for granted. If we had this discussion a couple of years ago, nobody would have thought that Israel would have, occupied Palestine, would have tried to appease relations with the Arab neighbors. Nobody would have thought that country and Lebanon would be sitting on a table, irrespective of the result, discussing maritime borders. Absolutely out of the question. So friends and enemies are not forever in international relations, and we would be doing good to think about this, simply because our take is mostly informed by what we know, and this does not hold true. I have in my mind also smaller states in the Eastern Mediterranean that go in a one-way street towards a war, simply because they refuse to realize that the world is changing. Now, what's happening in the East Med is not really, I think, about energy per se, although energy comes into it a lot. We have basically a set of established disputes, bilateral relations between Greece and Turkey, the Cyprus issue, and so on and so forth, upon which issues come to lay, like energy. Another layer Syria, another layer Libya, and so on and so forth. And so effectively, by allowing all these disputes to continue, and by allowing ourselves to see what's coming through the prism of the established conflicts, we end up with clusters that are really very difficult to tackle. So perhaps by way of suggestion would be to start deconstructing a little bit those clusters, and also doing what we can do about some of these disputes in order not to end up with blocks that we can hardly do anything about. And this is where the nice European Union comes in and does things, I'll go out on a limb and be very critical, as wrongly as it can. One, as I said, the fragmented way in which regions are looked into, where the way of the EU dealing with the region, at least in energy matters, has been, I think, very confused and ad hoc. This has led the EU giving very mixed messages regarding energy, where at one time you have the institutions like the EIB, the EBRD having stopped funding any fossil fuel projects, and on the other hand, at the same time, the European Union funding with seed funding of 120 million, the East Med infamous pipeline, and this is really a very mixed message that doesn't do good. Secondly, the future of energy in the region is electrification and interconnections. And the quicker we grow up to this and see it, the better we do, because I think the war in Ukraine, I'll go into this in a second, has the potential of drawing us back into a fossil fuel discussion that is not only very problematic for the environment as such, but I think it also means that we're going back to conflicts, because conflicts have been largely, unfortunately, about energy as well. So fossil fuel conflicts means going back to fossil fuels means also going back to conflicts. One of the wonderful characteristics of renewable sources is exactly that the value added lies in the common usage if and when the states desire. Renewable sources are not like oil and gas, they're not commodities over which states can, have to fight over, but just cooperate if need be. So I would hate to see that we're going back into discussions that will again take out of the grave pipeline discussions and all that we had managed to put aside just because of geopolitics. I'm not going to go into the technicalities of the issue, but I would suggest that we do things at least not in a hasty way. And I look and I see around a lot of if you like, exactly that, hasty discussions, hasty decisions that have the potential of drawing us back. I think now the trap is that there's a very big possibility of going for quick fixes, if you like. I was listening to the Polish foreign minister the other day saying that basically, if you read between the lines, forget about the environment, it's about European hard security anymore. And I would suggest that if we go in that way, we're going to very soon going to face a problem that transcends all of this. And so quick fixes, I think, will undermine climate change that will not only eventually affect the environment, but very specifically in ways that I hope Karim will cover, contribute to very hard security problems, migration issues, climate change in the Northern African region and the broader Middle East that will come back to bite Europe's behind on such issues, because obviously migration will come to Europe, obviously security issues will be there, obviously local disputes will be exacerbated, and so on and so forth. Secondly, half a minute, sir. In our quest to decouple Europe from Russian gas, I think we might run into the trap of taking LNG away from the most vulnerable. And this will also create an issue in the broader global south that will come back to bite Europe. Obviously, at the moment, we have issues where shipments of LNG are being turned halfway back to Europe because buyers are outbid by Europe, and that, I think, will create very, very serious problems. On the other hand, this is a very good opportunity to speed up transition to renewables. It's a wonderful opportunity to re-engage the Middle East, because the Middle East and the East Med have this wonderful ability of combining a lot of sun, a lot of wind, with also a lot of physical space upon which to deploy renewables. And so there will be a wonderful opportunity of connecting Europe to them, also inspiring other things on the ground. Human rights, democracy, this and that, rather than turning a blind eye to these because we want to secure contracts. So this holistic framework, if you like, if we have it at least at the back of our minds, will allow us to move ahead, because otherwise these people are going to turn to coal and start burning coal like crazy, and Europe will end up being like luxury cabin in a sinking boat. It doesn't matter. You have a clean Europe in a very dirty world. Europe is promoting theoretically cooperations and others like the East Med Gas Forum and so on and so forth. I would humbly suggest that cooperation is like cholesterol. You can have good cooperation and bad cooperation. So if cooperation is designed or ends up being exclusive, then I think it's going to be short-lived. So again, let's think outside the box. Let's include all littoral states, if possible, towards a future that lies in the direction of renewables, and the Ukraine war could offer a way into this. Sorry for taking too much time.
Thank you so much, Harry, for your insights. Lauri, I think with you we could talk about energy and governance for hours, but that could be the issue of yet another panel. I suggest we use you mostly to discuss what is hitting the news these days very much, meaning Ukraine, and how what risk and what opportunity Ukraine, basically the crisis in Ukraine, is bringing to the East Mediterranean. So I suggest we go that way with you.
Yes.
Lauri.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me to speak in front of you here and those who are watching us on the screen. So definitely, so I wanted to be very optimistic as always and talk about the good things that this war might bring. coming from Lebanon. So we had 15 years of war and then a total collapse. So I'm always optimistic that good things could happen from bad things. So basically this war between Ukraine and Russia, or the Russian war on Ukraine, might bring Europe closer to the Mediterranean, to the East Mediterranean, and that would, I don't know if that is good news or bad news, but that might mean that Europe needs to be more proactive in fixing some of the problems that exist in the region if they want the gas or the oil, right? So they cannot get everything for free. So let me say that before that, because we're talking about energy, security, collaboration. So in the Eastern Mediterranean and with the West or with Europe, there were always collaboration when it came to energy or in security. So the last was like the IEMed Gas Forum, where you had half of the members of the IEMed Gas Forum, European members, like France, Italy, Cyprus and Greece, and on the other side you had Israel and Egypt and the Palestinians and Jordan being part of the Eastern Mediterranean, trying to work together on energy issues, infrastructure, etc. And it was always the destination for that gas, if it comes from the Eastern Mediterranean, was to go to Europe, but there was never the opportunity because Europe was satisfied with the gas that it had from Russia and from whatever LNG, small parts that they were getting. So they were not that much interested, even though they were mixed signals that yes, Europe could be the destination, but at the same time there were a lot of talks about more about renewables and collaborating on renewables. So this Eastern Mediterranean existed for gas, and then suddenly it didn't have a raison d'etre, or they couldn't know what exactly to do and where to send the gas that was being produced or to be produced. So today what we are seeing is like a change in mood, and again driven by Europe, because Europe wants to diversify. So coming back to the Eastern Mediterranean to look for solutions. And in the Eastern Mediterranean and some of the North African countries, because for us Eastern Mediterranean is like a couple of countries, but the rest on North Africa, they're not part of our clan, but now they should be, I guess. So first, if you want maybe positive signs for the Eastern Mediterranean, so the opportunity that came was this MOU signed between Europe and Egypt and Israel. So imagine that Egypt had 2 LNG power plants or LNG terminals, and at some point before 2019 and 20, these were like almost non-functional because they had no use. Today, the European market is asking for LNG, and this infrastructure existing in Egypt will be a major player for LNG that goes from Israel to Europe to sell the gas. So imagine Israel couldn't find a market for its gas. They were selling to Jordanians and to the Egyptians, and that was like a bit forced by the U.S. politics. Like, yes, you need to buy the Israeli gas. Today, Europe needs that gas, even if it's small amount. But today, the security of Israel, of Europe, this energy security of Europe, is linked to this Eastern Mediterranean. So what does that mean? It means that you have to take that gas with all the spices that comes with it. Spices like Lebanon or Hezbollah in Lebanon could decide to send drones on the infrastructure of these gas platforms. So that means that there is an issue with security today, and you most probably that these platforms existing in the Eastern Mediterranean are at risk. So security plays an important role. So if Europe wants the gas, it comes with a risk in the Eastern Mediterranean. So would that mean that Europe needs to fix the problems between Lebanon and Israel? So that is on the table. Yes, if they want to secure gas from Israel, from Egypt, and later maybe from Lebanon and Cyprus, they need to fix some of the problems. Are they ready to do that? They need to contemplate that. Would they say that, no, we need their gas only for 7 years, and after 2030 it's a complete different world, so we don't want to care, we can bear with them for 7 years? A choice for them to make. But the other reality that we are having, again, to talk about security and energy, is that Mr. Biden is coming to the region soon, going to Saudi Arabia for meetings. So one issue that is being talked there, it's about a new security order where maybe a Middle Eastern NATO that includes Saudi Arabia, Israel, and Egypt, GCC countries. What would that mean? That would mean, if that is being created, first of all, like having normalization between Israel and the Saudi Arabians, this is a major game changer in the region. But that would mean that there is one entity that will not be very happy, Iran. So if Iran is not happy with this new model, so then they will go and seek to be a nuclear power capacity. They want to have a nuclear capacity so that they would leverage and equate with this new NATO style that is happening in the region as a security apparatus. So what does that mean? That means if Iran is to become a nuclear power, so that means that countries like Lebanon and Syria that are under the control kind of influence, if you want, of and part of the people in Gaza. So these people will have the backing of a nuclear Iran. That means, again, so your infrastructure in the Eastern Mediterranean, even in the North African countries, is at risk. So, and then you have to think as well, so what's the type of relation you want between Europe and Iran? Europe is always in favor of JCPOA, in favor of Iran, because they know the capacities of Iran, even in energy. Not talking about military, but energy. And then if they want this extra gas that could come from production from Iran, would Europe want to work with the Iranians? So what would that mean for the US and Europe? Today, US is really influencing the decisions that Europe is taking vis-a-vis Russia. So what would they think about Iran and a nuclear Iran that is very close to Europe? So that is another issue that we need to think of. So Europe wants the gas, but it comes with a lot of complexities that it has to decide if it wants to fix or not. So one aspect, if I can say, it's two ideas, but very quick ideas. So where we see the opportunities in this is, for instance, with the issue that Lebanon, as I said, Lebanon and Israel, they have a maritime border issue. Today, it is becoming kind of not only security issue, but related to oil and gas. Lebanon wants to produce gas, and the Israelis want to produce more gas and secure their fields. So that could be one opportunity for the US and even European to push for a deal to happen, and that would be a breakthrough, because this has been a very long dispute between Lebanon and Israel. It doesn't mean it will fix the whole Lebanon-Israel problem, but at least it will fix the maritime border dispute. Another issue that we are seeing is this reversal of policies we're seeing in the region. For instance, when Israel, in December, the Minister of Energy decided that she will not launch any new bids on oil and gas. May 2022, she decides to relaunch the bids. Let's see if there will be people who are interested. Interest, what does that mean? So it means several things. One of them, interest, means that the investors need to make sure that if they put money into in this, they will get a return. So Europe cannot have these mixed feelings, mixed messages saying that, yes, we want the gas, yes, we want new investments, but at the same time, we just want them for 10 years. Until 2030. That is a wrong message, maybe, because then investors will not want to fund or go into new projects. So that is very important as well to understand, like there is a need for investment for long term, and the mixed messages that they're getting from Europe and other places, this will not help for investors to come and invest. One other thing that Harry has mentioned that is very important to mention. Today, for Europe, we have Algeria. As mentioned, Algeria, Italy have new projects together. So Natrak and ENI will be developing gas fields. So Algeria, very important. Libya has a potential, but with all the problems that it has. And you have Morocco, which is wants to be the hub for renewable energy, again, linked to Europe. And then you have the Eastern Mediterranean, Egypt, Israel, linking their gas discoveries to Europe, and other countries, Lebanon, etc. What does that mean on governance issue? Because I want to reiterate what Harry has said. It's very important. Democracy is very important. Freedom is very important for these people. We don't want to end up at the end, because Europe needs the gas of these people, to end up like turning the blind eye or turning their faces to what's happening in these countries. The Eastern Mediterranean and the Mediterranean countries, and at least from our side, North Africa, Eastern Mediterranean, there are like people who are seeking to change the realities they are in. That Europe should not block that just because its security and its need for gas is being part of it now, being dependent on our part of the region. That is very important because we don't want to end up with the history with the grievances that we had in history when the Arab world was rich in oil and gas, and because of the oil and gas, we ended up like really not looking at democracy or not caring much about the people living there. I stop there.
Thank you so much, Ali. And that's, by the way, a very nice transition to the remaining two speakers, because our, with the remaining two speakers, Karim and Christian, if we can connect you from Oslo. With you, we want to go beyond the strict energy security nexus. We're talking about human security. So we will introduce a climate change with you, Karim, especially, and then migration in particular with Christian. So can you maybe add a climate change to the equation of the debate?
Sure. Well, thank you, Manuel, and thanks to IEMed and PRIO Cyprus Centre for the kind invitation. That's exactly why I'm here. I'm here to argue that climate change will have an increasingly central role on the human security in the Eastern Mediterranean today and into the future. The uniqueness of the Mediterranean region is obviously no secret. In terms of climate change, it's already warming up faster than anyone else. Not anyone else, but faster than the global average at least. So it's already increased temperature by 1.2 degrees Celsius compared to pre-industrial eras, and it's expected to increase in temperature by 20% faster than the global average. And it's also uniquely one of those unusual areas in the world where rainfall will become less rather than more. Normally in climate change models, most regions in the world will get more rainfall. In this Mediterranean region, something to do with the fact that it's a large body of water with landmass surrounding it, that this particular latitude is causing this. And in some parts of the Mediterranean, this will manifest itself in a more intense way. So in the southwest, Morocco, Algeria, for example, will see perhaps 40% reduction in precipitation compared to today, and that's under the business as usual or the worst case scenario climate change model. The Eastern Mediterranean, though, is perhaps overall mostly impacted, and that's to do with a number of factors. The primary impacts of climate change on the Eastern Mediterranean are up to 30% reduction in precipitation in Lebanon and overall in the Levant and south of Turkey, the Tigris-Euphrates waterheads, for example. It's an increase in temperature that could go up to 2.5 degrees in cities by mid-century 2060 and up to 5 degrees by the end of the century. Again, all of these numbers are based on a business as usual scenario, assuming we don't do what we're meant to be doing to stop climate change or to mitigate climate change. The other thing that is unique about the Eastern Mediterranean is rainfall variability. Rainfall doesn't happen constantly in the East Med, so it varies from one year. There's a drought year, a year with abundance of rainfall, and that natural flow, that variability will increase. So you'll get longer droughts, but also longer flooding periods. And because overall you have less rain, the groundwater aquifer's ability to contain water, to bridge this period of drought becomes less. So these are, in a nutshell, sort of the basic biophysical impacts. But what do they even mean? I think that the trouble with climate change is that there's a cascade of climate change impacts. There's the physical impacts I summarized to you, and then there's the socioeconomic impacts. So that's the next step. And it manifests itself primarily in two sectors, agriculture and tourism. And of course, in the East Med, agriculture and tourism are really major sectors. So in terms of agriculture, we have an increase in temperature, less rainfall, less water in general, less water availability for irrigation, and a shifting of the growing season. And altogether, these things lead to reduction in productivity of the land. They lead to dependence on imports, and of course that creates a susceptibility to the changes in the availability of food in the global food market. So that's not even mentioning Ukraine or the fact that Turkey and Egypt can't get the wheat that they need from Ukraine and Russia anymore. But it also means impacts on the rural populations that are entirely dependent on these sectors for food and for subsistence. The rural populations in the East Med in general tend to be poor. Two-thirds, for example, of the rural population in Palestine is poor. So there's this additional impact that can have on the livelihoods in the agriculture sector. In the tourism sector, if it gets too warm, the East Med will become less attractive to go to in the summer. And many of the tourism activities are dependent on high water consumption. So less water available also is an impact. So overall, you could get in a region where anywhere between 9 and 16% of the GDP comes from tourism, depending on the country, you could get a reduction of income in those countries. And you could also get a loss of millions of jobs in the case of countries like Egypt. Just to give you an example, the loss of the coral reefs in Egypt could lead to somewhere in the region of 6 billion every year in loss in revenue, just because of if the coral breaches continue as expected. They're resilient so far. They're doing okay compared to the Great Barrier Reef in Australia, but they're not going to survive for very long if the patterns of the trends continue. So that's sort of a first impact, socioeconomic impact. But what does that even mean? So these people losing their jobs in the agriculture sector, losing their jobs in the tourism sector, they're going to move to find jobs elsewhere. So they go to cities, perhaps, or finding other opportunities, doing something else that they're not necessarily trained to do. And that means potentially unemployment in cities or urban unemployment. And that's certainly a recipe for social discontent, and it's also a recipe for municipalities and city services not being able to provide the necessary services for an increased population, where you get massive influxes of urban migration. From that point onwards, that social discontent, we have less certainty about what's going to happen. The sort of secondary, tertiary impacts, it becomes less unsure. We're also even less sure what will happen to other regions, like the EU, for example, in terms of migration. What would happen? Do we get conflict? Do we get waves of migration moving into other regions like the EU, for example, which I think Harry alluded to. This, in our minds, and we can map this, and many have mapped this in research over the last couple of years, in charting all the different pathways in which this could manifest itself. But what we do know is that in many of these pathways, the resilience isn't there, the preparedness of the region isn't there. There are a number of structural weaknesses in the Eastern Mediterranean that make it unable to, makes it on the brink, makes it really susceptible to these impacts. And I'll make a short list of agony here. So the region overall has a population, the East Med has a population and an environmental footprint that far exceeds the natural ability of the land to sustain population in terms of water available and in terms of biocapacity. This happened ages ago. So the region already is living on sort of a capital it doesn't have, natural capital it doesn't have. The populations continue to grow, and in some parts of the region, not all of it, the East Med, it could go up to about 60% by mid-century. 60%. In the case of Egypt, that's about 60 million people. Infrastructure, fundamental infrastructure is already creaking, literally creaking. In the case of water infrastructure, we get Lebanon, Syria, Egypt, and Jordan lose about half of their water in distribution. Conflict and occupation is also adding to that susceptibility, especially for those most vulnerable, the refugees, the internally displaced as well. I'm not going to go too much into the socioeconomic issues or the weak governance or the social contract. I think I'd leave that to the conversations. But overall, the increasing competition between different countries is also a fundamental issue here, specifically because there isn't an agreement, a transboundary agreement on how do we distribute water. Almost all countries in the region share a river or share an aquifer with a neighboring country. And without transboundary agreements, we end up with recipes for that conflict. So these are structural weaknesses, what I'm trying to get at here. Am I done? I've got a couple of points to make.
Can you maybe wrap up in 1 minute?
Sure. So what I'm trying to say here is that we need to look at it I can briefly explain what I mean in sort of in this sequence. Between 1998 and 2012, Syria had the worst drought in its history since the 12th century. That drought was so bad that it killed 85% of the cattle, the private cattle. It destroyed significant amounts of agriculture and moved 800,000 people from rural areas to cities like Daraa, like Homs, like Hama. And these people certainly had social discontent. Whether that led to the Syrian uprising in 2011, we don't know for sure. But this is how it cascades. So what I want you to do is to think of climate change impacts, not just as a future thing in the East Med that will happen. And let's focus on the energy now, or let's focus on the crises that Harry mentioned. This list of conflicts and tensions that happens between countries of the region. These are the more urgent crises that we need to focus on. But think of the climate change as an ongoing threat multiplier that makes every one of those conflicts worse. There's another layer to add to Harry's list of layers that can come on top. And the point I also want to emphasize here is that this correlation between food security, loss of food security, resource competition between countries, the worsening living conditions correlate perfectly with all the reasons that cause conflict, violence, and tensions between countries. There is no causality established between the two of them. We don't know for sure that this leads to that, because you need an ideological factor here for violence to actually erupt, but the correlation happens quite neatly between them. There's also the element of uneven impacts. Uneven impacts of climate change in one area could potentially align with existing rifts between different communities. If certain communities are affected differently, they already don't like each other. There's also a potential for recruitment for terrorist organizations, for example, who could certainly prey on that. And then there's the issue of securitization. Once violence does erupt, those who are the players tend to securitize infrastructure, like water infrastructure, for example. And when they do that, they weaken the fundamental ability of a community to be resilient to climate change and to adapt to climate change. And I think maybe I'll talk about the rest during.
Yeah, we'll have time for discussion. Thank you very much, Karim. You mentioned social discontent. There is one specific category of people that has all reasons to be discontent. There is one category of people that is especially vulnerable to all the security threats that we've been mentioning. It is refugees. With you, Christian, I think we haven't introduced you. You are the director of the Peace Research, the PRIO Middle East Center. Unfortunately, you could not fly to Barcelona. With you, I understand that you will explain to us not only that refugees are a consequence of conflicts, but that they're also very much prone to be manipulated in conflicts around the region. So please, the floor is yours. We can see you very well, and I'm sure we'll be able to hear you as well very well. Welcome. Christian, the floor is yours.
Thanks a lot, Emmanuel. Thank you for the invitation. I was hoping to get exactly the 30,000 feet up that Harry referred to in his introduction, but unfortunately the pains of adaptation in the air industry has led to an SAS pilot strike, and I truly regret not being able to be with you. I already learned a lot from the previous speakers. I'm happy to be part of this, even if digitally. And let me also add that from PRIO side, we really appreciate the cooperation with IEMed and with other partners in Barcelona. The main claim that I'm going to make is that we need to take refugees, and for that matter other people displaced by conflict, seriously as conscious human beings with a capacity to act, and a capacity to act for that matter both for good and for bad. And I believe that inevitably requires a change in our discourse, in our public debate about the relationship between, on the one hand, wartime migration, and on the other hand, conflict and contention. My focus on my following comments will be on the Eastern Med, the Middle East, and I'll talk primarily about Syrian refugees. But of course, Syrian refugees and Syrians displaced by war is no little detail, given that they now constitute an estimated 13 million out of the 100 million people displaced globally. just want to check in whether you're with me or not. I can't see you, so if you could just confirm, Emmanuel, that...
We can hear you perfectly, Christian.
Super. So let me make 3 quick points. Firstly, if we put ourselves in the shoes of a prospective migrant in a war situation, it's always a choice. People, even in situations of extreme danger, do make choices. We have seen people who cling on to the mountainside in a conflict situation where with all as observers say that this is definitely suicidal, but still make that choice. And it's a choice not only between exit or not exit, it's a choice between exit, voice and loyalty, as the economist Hersman formulated it. It's a choice between leaving, between expressing voice where you are, and between being loyal to the contending forces. In the Syrian case, that will of course be the government. And if we look back to the early days of the Syrian conflict, we noted that a good share of those who fled did so to neighboring countries, not only to escape, but because this was also the only way in which they could continue their political, perhaps also military, engagement in opposition to the regime. Others fled, found themselves responding to the recruitment campaigns by Syrian resistance leaders, or to agents of the host government that were nudging them to engage in a resistance that those governments supported. Secondly, migration is also an object of conflict, of contention, and we have seen that with a strong anti-immigrant mobilization in most of the European countries, also European countries bordering on the Mediterranean, and even in the major host countries that are bordering Syria, which of course hosts the brunt of the Syrians that are internationally displaced. The large influx of refugees in 2015 triggered a number of new policies and practices by governments, and many of those are in fact undermining Europe's claim to leadership on human rights and on multilateral cooperation. And we heard several of the previous speakers issue stern warnings about compromising on the value agenda that the EU and Europe ultimately stands to champion. The EU-Turkey deal, for example, actualized by recent tough bargains to keep the door open to Swedish and Finnish NATO membership, is just part of a larger whole. Currently, it seems that other issues, such as the management of the COVID-19 pandemic, mounting energy prices, or climate change measures, just to mention a few, have placed the migration issue on the sidelines. Yet, I think it would be a mistake to believe that the contention over migration is an issue of the past. I think it's more accurate to see it as a latent issue, semi-dormant in most countries, certainly not all, but in most countries as we speak, but certainly with a potential for re-ignition. And then thirdly, we see that the refugee situation is not a question only about understanding those who have fled. It's about a question about the relationship between refugees, the host population, and the authorities in the hosting countries. If you look to Lebanon, for example, it's a mixed experience as a long-time host of Palestinian refugees has been a key factor in its response to Syrian refugees, for example, in its choice not to allow formal refugee camps to be established. Ultimately, this has led Lebanon to adopt a rather ambiguous hosting policy, but at the same time, we have to give it to them that it's not developed into a major host country of refugee-based militants, for example, in the way that Pakistan became such a hub for the Afghan resistance with rather dramatic consequences over the years. And while it's hard to in any way see Lebanon as a success right now, this may nonetheless count as a limited win, albeit a very pragmatic one. Finally, geopolitical forces are always at play, both regional and global geopolitical forces. And the Syrian conflict, with its distinct conflict dynamics from one territory to the next, and also its extreme shifts over time, is certainly a case in point. The southern theater, for example, towards Jordan, always had its own particular dynamic within which members of the Syrian refugee populations, as well as neighboring states, states of the region, and global powers played their part. So just to conclude, wartime migration is not only about people who escape conflict and about their right to protection, important as that is. It is also about people who engage in contention from exile. It constitutes a set of questions that are politically contentious and potentially deeply divisive across Europe. And serious political engagement with groups and individuals residing in exile, recognizing them not only as victims, but as political agents with their own agendas and their own dreams for the future, is ultimately a prerequisite for long-term peace. This, admittedly, is a tall agenda, and it is one fraught with dilemmas, but therefore it is also one that requires principled, honest, serious, and respectful political debate. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christian. Thank you for bringing that important aspect to the debate. Indeed, you saw that we did cover a lot of ground with this debate. This is yet another debate where, after which you feel that there is, that the region looks like indeed a pressure cooker, from the refugees to the food prices to the climate situation, governance issues. You really always, after these debates, have the impression that all the ingredients are really there for quite yet other quite negative scenarios to happen. So we did cover a lot of ground, which means that there is a lot of ground for the debate as well. So from home or from here, from the room, I would very much encourage you already to, to let me know if you have any comments or questions to the panelists. This is really a privilege to have these experts here at the IEMed. Let's try to make the best use of them. Who wants to start with a comment or question? Anyone wants to shoot first? Matthias.
Hello, everyone. Well, thank you very much. I'm Matthias Ibanez, Program Officer here at the IEMed, the Sustainable Development Department. And I would like to raise two issues that you mentioned. Harry mentioned Israel very briefly. I also would like to, regarding Israel right now, we all know that new alliances are happening, normalization of relations as well. So how Israel could be a game changer in the region, that would be my first question. And also knowing Israel and as well, also known as the startup nation, how Israel also can help in the renewable energy sector, right? How this cooperation could be beneficial also for Europe and on the green transition. And my second question would be related with the NATO summit in Madrid of last week. We know that they mentioned the energy security and the strategic concept that it was approved in the gathering. It was there, the energy, as one of the key achievements on the conference. So I would like to know your opinion, how this could change like relations also, or even like head towards new confrontations maybe, because if energy security is a hybrid threat, as they called in the strategic document, this could lead to potential conflicts maybe in the future, not with Russia, but maybe Libya or other countries that could play with energy cuts in the region, right? So that could be my two questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's continue maybe with the second question. So.
Hi, I'm Justine. I basically had the same question as Matthias. I was thinking about Israel because you mentioned it, and I was thinking, when reading the title of this conference, when the East meets the West, I was thinking, hang on, the normalization is happening also in the East, but also we have one key actor, which is Morocco, is working on its normalization. So I wanted to basically have a few inputs on, the new role of Israel to play also in the west of the Mediterranean. So thank you very much for your remarks.
Thank you. So who would want to take these questions first? That goes very much in Harry and Laurie's direction. So.
You, please.
Okay. Yes. Just one quick comment on this, and then I'll let Harry to say more. What I can say is, like, it is interesting to watch this normalization that is happening and the peace treaties that is happening between Israel and the GCC countries. I think it was, we were all surprised by this very warm peace between Israel and the UAE on different levels. We couldn't catch up. Every day there were new projects, you know, like Israel has peace with Jordan, Israel has peace with Egypt, but it's not that kind of peace. This was very new to us. This was like passion and beyond passion. So, but what is happening, basically interesting stuff on this nexus between climate, energy, and water projects is very interesting to look at. So when you see this new project between Israel and Jordan and the UAE on energy and water. So Jordan is wants to become the electricity hub of the region. They are producing a lot because at one point they had all these policies of investing in renewable, investing in gas, investing in power plants, etc. So suddenly they have more than they need electricity. And they would want to sell this electricity around. Israel is looking into having more of clean energy, so renewables. And Israel and Jordan needs water. So, and they both need money for these projects. So the best combination was like to do a project where Jordan, that has the vast lands and the desert, they built the solar plants, and they sell gas to Israel. In return, Israel sends water or sells water to the Jordanians because Jordan is in need of water, is, I think, the poorest in our region in water. So this, and who's paying for all of that? Or it's the project paid by UAE. The UAE has a role. So these are the kind of projects that everybody's looking for, to coordinate, to collaborate in the region, to tackle the issues that we're facing. So one issue, again, on water. So Israel is very advanced in a desalination projects, fine, because they use a lot of that water. And the GCC is developed as well. So these are like two places where this technology is very advanced. But that requires a lot of energy. So now, for now, they can't use any kind of energy, rather they need to use the gas energy. So even one question that is being asked, should we export this gas that we want to produce or use the gas for the desalination projects? Because all the region needs this kind of project to have water, drinkable water, water for irrigation, etc., because there is a major problem. So these are the issues that this kind of collaboration is going to push them forward. So I think for Saudi Arabia, Israel, I think, again, this will be a game changer if these two countries do sign a peace treaty. That will completely change the situation in the country, and then in the region. And then you have places like Lebanon, Syria, the Palestinian Authority, other places like in Algeria who are against Israel. They're not like pro-peace like other places. So these have different dynamics. Lebanon, Israel is completely different dynamics as well from others. We had war, we had people that have died, and there is another, it cannot be like just like having normalization and peace. It's a longer process that I don't think no one today is talking about for Lebanon and Israel. But the change in the region will definitely have an impact on the country.
Thank you, Lauri. And Harry, it's not only trilateral formats that Lauri mentioned, it's also the Negev Forum, it's also the East Gas Forum, where Israel has managed to position itself with a quite pivotal role. So you want to elaborate on this maybe?
I can, yes, thank you. Half a step back. The IEMed pipeline, I think, is very important to take into consideration, not from a standpoint of gas. To my mind, the IEMed pipeline is a very good example of a political move. the EastMed pipeline project was, to me, totally a Netanyahu project that coincided with his 13 years of premiership. It allowed Netanyahu to use it politically fantastically, and chapeau to him for rendering even Cyprus and Greece apologists for his regime in the European Union, even in troubled times, putting them together on the bandwagon of energy. I remind you that Cyprus blocked EU sanctions against Israel in 2015 regarding the annexation of the Golan Heights because of the chami-chami relationship at the time with Israel. Yeah? So this is a political project par excellence, I think. And so kudos to him for that. Now, Israel has shown extreme pragmatism, I think, because you see what's happening now. Israel is selling its gas. It's basically sending its gas to Lebanon via Egypt, because it realizes, Lebanon is going to be reconstructed, I think, partly due to Israeli gas via Egypt, because it's of a pragmatic realization that Lebanon needs to be done with it. With Jordan, there is, notwithstanding the rest of the problems, there's now cooperation on water issues, simply out of a pragmatic realization on both sides that this is one area where they're united by the bonds of common suffering. Normalization of ties with Turkey. I think there is immense mistrust on both sides, and in particular now there is a little bit of a haste on the part of Ankara. Israel is extremely reserved in this, but still they want to go ahead because they realize that things will be changing. Having said that, I don't see any pipelines, no pipelines. I know there's a resurgence of discussion and all. I personally see absolutely no pipelines because Israel, Turkey, and so on and so forth, even though they might be short, for a number of reasons. One is because the pipelines require trust. These are permanent structures, and they're not going to be there. Look at what's happening in the Gulf. The Gulf is a fantastic place for pipelines. There's geographic proximity, there's flat terrains, not a single pipeline because of huge mistrust. There's one pipeline. Yes, correct. The exception that verifies the rule. Also the fact that, these are going to start taking effect years from now. Pipelines, even if there were to be political agreements and so on and so forth, require 5 years to build and 15 years of operation to become financially viable, and a few billions. So I don't think we have that. But having said that, we had Netanyahu, now we had Lapid, Bennett. We might go back to previous regimes. So be very, very careful where politically things will go. So pragmatism, I think, has been there. To me, the bid is on the European Union. The European Union could inspire, could facilitate, could fund projects in the broader region that would allow a normalization between the states on the backdrop of renewable sources, green energy, hydrogen, inshallah, in the future, green hydrogen that would facilitate all of this. Still, I'm a little bit skeptical because the discussion is very hasty to me. Now we're still going along in, European energy independence, and so I'm not quite sure. I'm not quite sure if we're going to get independent from Russia entirely, if we want to get entirely independent from Russia entirely in the end, if the BRI is going to collide with the B3W, with the G7, with the global gateway. Let's see how things go. But I'm afraid that we're going in a direction of securing now quick fixes that might undermine the bigger projects that Karim was explaining. On Morocco, I have absolutely no clue, but I think you do.
Well, Morocco and Israel, I don't have more clues than the ones that we already know. I mean, that is something that it's quite disruptive in the region, as we have been noticing those days because of the relationship between Algeria and Morocco. And now that I mentioned Algeria, I should have done before today is the 60th anniversary of the independence. Yes. So at some point we have to celebrate it, and that's all. So, I mean, this is something that for me has been quite disruptive, not because of the region, but because how we were thinking of Western Mediterranean. That was something completely unexpected in some way. That at the very beginning we thought that was something that Trump maybe was, some funny thing, and at the end it was not at all, and it's something that I think is there to remain. So I don't know. I mean, there is no answer here because it very much what will happen between Algeria and Morocco and those relationships. That's my idea. I mean, but I'm not as convinced that Israel wants to be, to be influential in Morocco. But in this case, I think this is the card that has been played in this side, from the United States, from Morocco, and this is this triangle who is in there. I think it's more a card than a real set, but we will see. As we were saying, if we had this speech some 2 or 3 months ago, nothing of what had been said would have been said.
But just can I add just a correction? And okay, not correction, just not a correction. Just I don't know what's the word. Just to make it clear, Lebanon is signing a deal with Egypt on selling gas from Egypt to Lebanon. Just that. Yeah. Where the gas comes from, Lebanon does not want to know.
That's the whole point.
Yeah, just to make it clear. In Lebanon, they're just like signing a deal with Egypt to buy the gas that will come through the Arab gas pipeline that comes from Egypt to Jordan via Syria to Lebanon. I think Syria has a problem. They need to know because they will take the gas. We are getting the Syrian gas.
And Aurelia, I think there is a similar.
Well noted.
I think Aurelia, there is a similar situation in the West Med, whereby a country doesn't want to know where the gas is coming from. So that's also very much echoing our East meets West things. Karim, and then we'll have one more question.
Sorry, can I just pick on the Israeli question here? So I think one thing we had seen on the desalination front was a lot of advancement in terms of reverse osmosis desalination. So that's more energy efficient, produces less carbon, more cost efficient as well. Compared to traditional energy intensive desalination plants that we find in the Gulf, find in parts of the US, which is basically using the free heat that comes during making electricity and using that from gas, for example, and using that to power basically evaporating water and recollecting it again. While reverse osmosis is a very different technology. And I think a lot of countries do aspire to produce equally efficient reverse osmosis desalination, similar to the Israeli experience, which is, as I say, has been quite successful. On the renewable energy front, though, we have not seen that much advancement. Actually, Israel has been a little bit of a disappointment. They seem to have stalled on renewable energy. There's not much going on. Once the gas was there, all the renewable energy projects in Israel seem to have gone by the wayside. And instead, we've seen transition from imported coal to local natural gas instead, which is net good for the environment, less emissions, about half of the emissions, but not necessarily inspiring in terms of transitioning towards a greener source of renewable energy.
That's interesting,
Because
Karim.
they don't have enough land. This is one of the causes they're saying, either for security reasons or for other reasons. They don't have enough land.
Aurelia, you wanted to add something?
Just a very short. No, concerning what Karim was saying. I mean, also this idea that I, at the end of my speech, I say that I have this idea that we are also putting the pieces of the hydrogen. I mean, because when we will build up liquefaction plants and regasification plants, there will be hydrogen plants in the future. So also we are setting these pieces in this Mediterranean space.
Now the floor is yours. Sorry, we kept you waiting, and then there will be another question.
No, it's
in the
okay.
front.
I don't actually have a question. I have a comment, and then that'll give more room for a question. As a Palestinian, I just feel compelled to bring the perspective of the Palestinians into this, because obviously the benefits of cooperation and normalization for these states aren't lost on us. But I think the thing is that with Egypt and Jordan in particular, given the decrease in freedom of movement, we've kind of accepted those normalization agreements a long time ago, because those are the lifelines of that's how we get into our land, right? So if you're from Gaza, you have to go through Egypt. If you're from the West Bank, you have to go through Jordan. So we've accepted it, given that we've lost the freedom of entry into the land for those of us who are still lucky enough to go into the territories. That's keeping the reality of energy and economic cooperation aside, I just feel compelled to say that that's why the GCC normalization, the Abraham Accords, really did feel like a stab in the back, and Sudan and Morocco. And we know more are coming, but I do believe that there's very little incentive left on the table for Israel to do anything in terms of the Palestinian question now. So I just wanted to bring that point to the table. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for the point, by the way. I just wanted to, it's a comment I want to ask, because we didn't talk a lot about the US, not intervention, but meddling, and it's going to channel down to two, because I know we're talking about East and West Med, but in both cases, I'm wondering what's the role of the US? And in the case of Lebanon, I don't want to be too specific, but what's the extent that you can see both sides asking to come to an agreement, because both sides are going to push and it's not equal on both sides. And in particular for Spain, I wanted to ask, I'm just wondering that you said now we're using more liquid gas instead of gas, which tends to be more expensive and it's coming from the US. So how much of that is by coincidence, because Algeria seems closer and I don't know why they're direct, I don't know the specifics, and how much of it is US policy of wanting to sell their own gas at a premium to a place like Spain, which doesn't need to do that.
Yeah, thank you again both for the comment and the question, and that question actually also relates to a discussion we just had prior to this debate. It sometimes feels that a lot of issues that do affect the European Union when it comes to EU-Med relations are cooked outside, and there is maybe a renewed need of actorship from the European Union on a lot of different issues. So I don't know who wants to. Aurelia, you want to start?
Maybe the last one. I can. That's it. Well, what you asked for. I mean, it's a bit related to what I was trying to explain in this idea that what is happening. I'm not saying that the war in Ukraine was because of that, but it's happening that they're changing the way of trading natural gas worldwide. So, in this sense, I think that there was this big change in 2015 when President Obama started saying that they would be able to export gas. And this has been a game changer. And my idea, I'm not saying I'm right, is that this is happening something like it had happened in the 70s with the OPEC. And what is happening up to now is that they are setting the rules, and this also answers something that has been asked there of the NATO and the energy security, which is the idea that we are setting a new international governance structure of natural gas. So what has happening here? I mean, there has been the coincidence between what was doing Spain and what the United States did. Firstly, in Spain, we are the third country in the world in capacity of regasification. That is not related to the United States. That is related to something that will be very long to explain here, but with the electric sector and so on. I forget. But we have the capacity to buy this gas. That was the first thing which happened. And my thought, I'm not saying this is true, I cannot prove it, but they had been selling gas under cost. I mean, because now that this market is under pressure, and this I calculate, in Spain we're paying more than the double for the American gas than from the Algerian gas through pipeline. So this will harm very, very strong, of course, our competitivity and our economics. But that means that the United States or the gas companies of the United States would have something to say in the future of the world gas, which is one of the things which I'm thinking we are playing here. And it's related to two things. One is the capacity of generating rain as oil, and the second one, as I said, is who would have the pieces of the hydrogen geopolitics. I don't know if I answered that.
Someone else wants to come on this? Both?
Yeah.
Harry, Laura?
No, I very, very much agree with this. You know, the situation before the war was that the U.S. the US gas was at -$2 because they needed to get it out of the country to get the, so they were physically paying people to get it out of the country because they needed to meet the targets. And then they came back with selling extremely high-priced LNG to Europe that was really not ready to. Now, to me, the problem is very political because obviously the price is so high that the US felt compelled to touch upon this, to tap into the strategic reserves, and you don't do that unless the price is really, really very good. Now, Europe is not ready to receive it because there's not enough capacity to receive, and also there's very little connectivity in between. I was in Brussels very recently with the former energy minister of Qatar, who was reminding us of Qatar going to the EU time and again, even 10 years ago, and saying, would you like to buy a little bit of LNG? No. I said, they looked at us from their high horse and dismissed us. And now they're going back to Qatar begging for LNG, and Qatar said, look, I mean, we'd love to sell it to you, and of course they will, because they'll sell it for sky high, but we can't, because our companies are already booked for the next 4 to 5 years. So the US comes in and promises 50 BCM of gas. Now, to me, this is impossible to get. 50 BCM of gas at the moment you cannot get. Just to give you the measure, there is 523 BCM of gas going around the world. That's it. It's finite. 155 was coming from Russia to Europe. Europe produces 87, including the UK, -8 per year. They were importing, including Turkey and the UK, 108. And so in order to even get 50 BCM, if you can pay it, it's like trying to get medicines in Lebanon. It doesn't matter how much money you have. You won't get the medicines. So the North and South America together import 20 BCM. 6 countries together, including Malaysia, Indonesia, Singapore, Thailand, Pakistan, all of these get 40 together. Where the hell are you going to get 50 BCM? Nowhere. So you promise to get 50 BCM, inshallah, and that taps into the discussion of energy the energy security of NATO and all of this. I don't know they have a clue. They're trying to go in one direction. I'm a little bit scared about that direction, but I don't think they have. And of course, it depends on how you interpret energy security. If it's narrowly construed or broadly construed, because at the moment, with volatile prices of oil and gas, we're going into oil and gas exactly what happened in 1973, where the finite number of oil available at the time meant that heavy investment in oil, which of course prolonged the oil age because these people needed to get their money back eventually. So now forget about environment, forgive me for saying, hopefully not, but forget about it, because we need to get our security, our energy security, and that will come at a super high cost. And rapidly trying to decouple ourselves from Russia, I don't think it can happen. Plus, imagine what the sanctions will do to the ability of Russia to support nuclear tech around the world. They have factories running at the moment, 28 of them, with Russian technology in Africa and Asia. If material is not available, if spare parts are not available, I don't want to know what happens to nuclear plants like that. So we need to think a little bit deeper, if you like, and I'm not quite sure if that is in place.
Laurie?
Yes, thank you. So, look, the war has changed a lot of the policies that have been put in place. I know that EU is struggling, saying that yes, we want gas. Yes, they're going and looking for other places for gas, pushing people like, yeah, we do MOUs, let's get your gas. But don't forget that we have our targets. Yes, we are continuing with our targets. I don't know how much these targets they will be met. But we have a problem that about an underinvestment in oil and gas. In the past 2-3 years at least, there was this huge attack on oil and gas sector. And even the IEA was pushing everyone to stop even investing. And even the President Biden had his whole agenda on Green Deal, Green Agenda, etc. And now he pushes people to produce more gas. He pushes oil and gas, exactly. He pushes everyone in OPEC Plus to push produce as much as they can, spare capacity, push to the end, because he has a problem in his country with the gasoline prices that will not be solved by more production. Now he's attacking the gas stations, saying that you are responsible for the increase in gasoline. So there is a problem in investment. And why I'm saying this, because to go back to the Algeria issue, why Algeria is not providing today, they have an investment issue. They didn't have enough investment for different reasons, but being it some investors being afraid of investing because of the difficulties in investing in Algeria, monopoly of Algeria, of Sonatrach, etc. These are changing today. They have changed the law so that they're more flexible, so they're able to invest more, to attract more investors, so that they'll be able to produce more. Now the MOU with the ENI will push for more investment that would come into Algeria to invest more, so that they could get their gas into the market. They have infrastructure, but most probably, I don't know how much if they want to rely to LNG as well, to send it not only to Spain. Spain's problem is like it's an island. Okay, the LNG comes, and then where does it go? It doesn't go anywhere. Like even it doesn't go to the neighboring to the neighboring France.
To France is where it would not go.
Exactly, exactly. France has the monopoly of the nuclear. France wants to stay on nuclear, whatever. They don't want any other thing for their system. So it is, Spain is like, they want to play a role, but there is a problem of it stops and it doesn't go to mainland Europe, if you want to call it. So you have other places. Greece wants to play that role of getting more of the LNG, going there. Croatia wants to. Of course. So we have all these. You need more LNG plants to get the LNG, because it needs to come somewhere to become gas and then use the pipelines that exist. Exactly. So that's the problem that Europe is facing today. And the problem of underinvestment is adding to that as well. So now the mixed messages don't help. You want to invest, you cannot tell me it's only for 7 years. No one will invest, you will have other problems. So Europe needs to find a solution to itself. I don't know. Another problem about the US. So the US is an important player in the region. Before even all of this happening, the US had a law or act, how they call it, on cooperation, on energy and security in the Eastern Mediterranean itself. So it knows the importance. It knows that Russia was there before even all of this happening. Russia being in Syria was a problem for the Americans. So they were already there collaborating with Egypt, with Greece, with Israel, with Cyprus on all of this. Now they are the main mediator between Lebanon and Israel. And this is what Lebanon and Israel wanted, to have the US as a mediator. Lebanon understanding very well that the US is not an objective mediator, but it's the only one who can deliver a deal if the deal is on the table. Today, what's happening, it's like the negotiations are continuing. There is escalation on the Lebanese part because they want a better deal on what they've gotten until now. Lebanon wants to have a deal because it wants to produce, because the equation today is if we don't solve the maritime border issue, Total will not work in Block 9, which is in the contested area. So we are in front of this equation where if we don't find a solution to the maritime border, maybe we will not be able to produce. And Lebanon wants to produce. They want to produce for different reasons. One of them, we have zero energy sources. We pay a lot for imported fuel and imported diesel, etc., whatever, and for political leverage, for economic leverage, whatever. So they want to do that. So that could be a push so that they would solve the crisis. Same time, Israel, because Israel wants now to have a better security and better secure area for the investors, if they code for the fourth licensing round, and if companies don't buy, best only Energean is investing, that will not help. They need big players to come in, Total, ENI, the rest. They want them to come. So they won't come if they feel that every time there is a drone attack or there are attacks coming from there. So there are two good reasons today from Lebanon and Israel to find a solution. So let's hope that will happen. Again, this is one of the opportunities because of the war in Russia and because the EU needs the gas, and the closer it is, cheaper it is.
Thank you so much, Aria. Unless Christian or anyone else wants to come in. So Christian, let me know if that's the case. It is 8. I really found this conversation very, very interesting. I hope it was the same the same one for the audience. Thank you very much. Thank you for my colleague Paula, who prepared very much this event. Thank you very much to everyone. Have a nice evening and a nice stay in Barcelona for the speakers that
Thank
we
you.
hosted.
And in Oslo.